entitled Living with Your Circumstances. We looked at God's people, the Jews, as they were taken into captivity in Babylon. And I'm just going to review that real quick for those of you who were not here this morning. One critical thing in all of this, you have to maintain your belief in the sovereignty of God. And that is that God is in control, all right? And He is working these things out for our good and for His glory. It talks about that there in verse number 4 when He said, I have cause to be carried away. So He wanted them to know this wasn't an accident. This was a part of His plan. Number 2, we said, don't exempt yourself from obedience. So in verse 4 there, it says, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives. And what we have a tendency to do is exempt ourselves from our responsibility to obey. But the truth of the matter is, we are to always obey. All of us are to always obey regardless of circumstances. You say, well, it's impossible for me in this situation that I'm in to do everything maybe that I used to do. Do you think God's not smart enough to figure that out? All right? And so, when you are not able to do something, God doesn't expect you. What kind of God would He be if He demanded you to do things that you're not able to do? That's ridiculous. And so, but oftentimes we exempt ourselves, and it's not because of inability, it's because of unwillingness. And we're looking for an easy way out. Number 3, you got to keep on living. Keep on living. And obviously the parallels to this passage and to our current circumstances living in the pandemic are, by the way, I checked the numbers today. They tested 30-some thousand people. 3.3% of them tested positive, supposedly. 3.3. That's the lowest it's been since it started. That's the lowest day since it started. And hospitalizations are down, and there is some optimism. But we've got to keep on living. All right? You cannot crawl in a hole. You can't pull the covers over your head and refuse to get out of bed. You got to keep on living. And we have to be careful. We have to be cautious. We have to be respectful. We talked about all that. But He said to these people in verse 5, He said, you build houses, you dwell in them, you plant gardens, you eat of the fruit of your garden. He said, you keep on living. And so we understand that. Number 4, enjoy family relationships. He said in verse 6, take ye wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, that they may be increased there and not be diminished. By the way, I didn't make this one of the points. I really intended to, but it says there that you're to increase and not diminish. This, when you go through adversity, that's a time of growth. All right. The Bible, you go back to the book of Acts, and every time the church was persecuted, it grew. And whenever there was persecution, and they fled, they went everywhere preaching the gospel. And so Satan is doing everything he can to try to put clamps on the church. But let me just tell you, the gates of hell won't prevail against the church. And all that is happening, if we do our job, is that the gospel is going to spread and not be diminished. The last point we looked at this morning, we talked about enjoying family relationships and how critical that is when you're going through times of difficulty. And then the last thing we said this morning was we need to plan for the future. And again, in verse 6, he talks about taking wives and having sons and daughters, and taking wives for your sons and living for the future. Don't live as if there is no future. There is a future. And we all understand this. Most of us would understand this, that the future that we can see here on this earth is a very small part of our future. It is minuscule when compared to eternity. We get all wrapped up in what is going on right now and forget that we are going to live forever and forever and forever and forever and forever and forever. You get the idea, or I need to keep going? Either in heaven for those who are saved, who have trusted Jesus as their Savior, or in hell for those who have not. But eternity awaits. It is appointed unto man once to die, and after this the judgment. To be absent from the body for the saved is to be present with the Lord. And so we are to plan for the future. You know, I think that one thing that's going to come out of this difficult time in which we live is that a lot of people are going to begin searching for answers. They're going to be looking for answers. And when a pandemic brings you to a position of hopelessness, and you realize there's really nothing I can do to fix this, there's nothing I can do to correct this, it by that very nature, it causes you to look to a higher power. And we know that His name is Jesus. So, look at verse number 7, and we'll pick up where we left off. Verse number 7. He's speaking here to the Jews living in Babylonian captivity. He says, and seek the peace of the city whither I have caused you to be carried away captives, and pray unto the Lord for it, for in the peace thereof shall ye have peace. So number 6, here's what I wrote down. Minister where you are. Minister where you are. This is, how many times have we heard this term? This was their new normal. All right? They're not in Jerusalem anymore. They're in Babylon. They're not living in freedom anymore. They're living in captivity. And here is what Jeremiah the prophet, as inspired by the Spirit of God, said to them, seek the peace of the city whither I have caused you to be carried away captives, and pray unto the Lord for it. You understand tonight that whenever you are forced into difficult circumstances, the one thing, or one of the things that you can control is your effort to minister. That is one thing. I mentioned the McConkeys a while ago, and I know that Brother John and Miss Jamie have been faithful witnesses there in the hospital, and have passed out tracts and invited people to church and tried to tell people about the Lord. Now think about it. Had Joel not been diagnosed with cancer, they would never have crossed paths with those people. They would never have crossed paths with those people. Had Joel, that little 10, 11-year-old boy, not had that tumor in his leg that they found out was malignant, they would never have ever even had an opportunity to give the gospel. But what the McConkeys are trying to do, and what we should be faithful to try to do, is they're trying to minister where they are. I got ahead of myself. Think about the early church. And persecution came. Acts chapter 8, verse number 4. Therefore, they that were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word. The worst thing that ever happened to the enemy was to bring persecution against the church. You know why? Because it forced them out of their comfort zone. By the way, that's why ultimately we got the gospel. You know why? Because persecution came and pushed them out of Jerusalem, and they ended up going into the uttermost parts of the earth, and the Gentiles nations began to hear the gospel. Acts 11:19. Now they which were scattered abroad upon the persecution that arose about Stephen traveled as far as Phoenicia and Cyprus and Antioch, preaching the word to none but unto the Jews only. What did Paul do when he went to Philippi? And he was arrested and thrown into jail. What did he do? He preached the gospel. And the Philippian jailer got saved. You see, the reality is this is not the time for us to quit ministering. This is not the time. We don't get a pass. We may have to make adjustments, and we've had to make adjustments, and we may have to do some things a little bit differently, but this is not the time for us to quit ministering. Jeremiah telling these Jews who were being held captive in Babylon, here's what he said. Get that? I like this. Here's what he said. You make that a better place. That's what he said. You make that a, can I ask you a question? The places you go, do you make them better places? The place you work, is it a better place because you work there? It ought to be. And when adversity comes into our lives and drives us from our comfortable places, and it pushes us into places that are way outside our box, way outside our normal, you ought to make that a better place too. So when you're dealing with your circumstances, be sure to minister where you are. Number 7, be careful who you listen to. Be careful who you listen to. Look at verse 8. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, let not your prophets and your diviners that be in the midst of you deceive you, neither hearken to your dreams which ye cause to be dreamed. For they prophesy falsely unto you in my name. Listen to what he said. I have not sent them, saith the Lord. You see, there were false prophets in Jerusalem and in Babylon. And God gives his people a warning. And the warning is, you be careful who you listen to. Now here's what I have found to be true in my life. When adversity comes, man, I'm looking for answers, aren't you? I'm looking for answers. How can I fix this? What can I do to make this better? How can I correct this? But the truth is, one of the most dangerous things about times of turmoil and unrest is that we do start looking for answers. We live in a modern day of technology and social media. There have never been more answers out there than there are today. The world is filled with answers, but you can't trust all of them. You can't trust all of them. Paul writes from Corinth to the churches of Galatia. Here's what he said. Ye did run well, Galatians 5, 7, and 8. Ye did run well. Who did hinder you that ye should not obey the truth? This persuasion cometh not of him that calleth you. Here's what Paul said to these Christians at Galatia. He said, I don't know who you've been listening to, but it's not the Lord. That's what he said to them. I was talking to a man this week, and we made the decision for the students at school and for the staff. We made the decision to do the gator mask, and I went to Brother Tommy, and he's not here tonight. But I went to him and I said, "Hey man, do you guys do these gators?" And he said, "Yeah." And they made some, and we bought them and gave every student one, gave all the staff one. Well, like the day we got them, there was a study that came out at Duke that said gators, these gator masks, these scarves, they're ineffective at stopping the virus, COVID virus. And they said, as a matter of fact, we have found in our tests that it actually, because they're so, you breathe through them, that it actually spreads the virus. Well, we had just spent like $600. Spread, baby, spread. So Brother Tommy, I said something about it. Brother Tommy, he sent me a message or called me, I don't remember. He said, "Preacher," he said, "just so you know, not all gators are the same." Well, it's true. The ones we got from him, man, those things are heavy duty. You can't hardly breathe through them. So I was talking to a man this week, and he said, oh, by the way, the day after the study came out at Duke, a study came out from another university debunking the findings at Duke. And so I was talking to a man this week, and he was asking about the school, a good man. And I told him, I said, well, we do this. He said, well, you know, Duke University does a study. I said, well, number one, I don't like Duke. I didn't say that. He said, you know, Duke University did a study. And he said, they have found, and I said, and another university did a study the next day debunking Duke's findings. I said, you know what we've decided to do? We've decided to do the best we know how to do, to seek the Lord in this, to follow His leadership. And we're not going to change every time some expert says something different. I remember the first Saturday, I was getting ready that day to drive to Georgia to preach in Canton. And this whole thing had just come up, and we dismissed school on Friday. And we found out, man, this virus is around. So we had our outreach meeting that Saturday, and we're all back there with our phones trying to find out what kills COVID. There's Brother Tommy. He is back there. And what kills COVID? And how many of you were back there that Saturday? More of you. You just don't remember it. That was like 5 years ago. And there was about 50 of us back there. And what kills COVID? How long does COVID live on cardboard? How long does COVID live on hard surfaces? And man, we're going around, we're cleaning everything. You know why? Because they said, man, you can't touch. Don't touch. How many of you remember this one? Don't touch gas pumps. Yeah. Well, that's kind of tricky. And you know what I've learned? There ain't no such thing as an expert. They're changing, and I'm not belittling it. You know, you've heard me for the last 5 months better. You've heard me enough to know that I'm not belittling it. But I am saying this: you got to be careful who you listen to. So you get it if you touch things. Then it was droplets. Then it was. You got to be within 6 feet of somebody for at least 15 minutes. Then you get it if you're around anybody who sings. And some of you took that literally. You never sing. And all these different. And you know what? I just decided. You know what? I'm going to try to study and learn the best I can. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to go to anyone horizontally for my answers. I'm going to look vertically for my answers. Amen. Yeah. I'm going to ask the Lord, what do you want me to do? By the way, it's that way in every area of life. You got to be careful who you listen to. We talked about the family a while ago. Do you know that outside the walls of a Bible preaching church, very seldom will you ever hear anyone teach you how to really have a godly biblical family? You're not. We are as confused as a termite in a yo-yo, and we're listening over here, we're listening over here, we're listening over here, we listen to this guy over here. And I know this is true because I saw it on the internet, I read it on the internet, it's got to be true. And we are going crazy because we're not careful who we listen to. Be careful who you get advice from. You know what we tend to do when we get advice? We find somebody that we think is going to tell us what we want to hear. Right? And you can find those people. People in our church have made decisions over the years. I'm not a controlling pastor. I don't have to be the authority in your life. Have no doubt. God didn't give me that authority. But how many times have someone done something that apparently was very foolish and someone say to me, did they ask you about that? No, they didn't ask me. You know why? Because they knew what I was going to say. Be careful who you listen to. You young people here tonight, I'm here to tell you, your parents are smarter than you think they are. You ought to listen to them. We were talking the other day, Donna and I were talking, and she said, we replayed something, and she said, that doesn't make any sense. And then she said, I told myself I'm not going to say that anymore. And like 15 minutes later, she said, that does. I said, ha! How many times have we said that in the last 6 months? You know why? Because it doesn't make any sense. Be careful. Be careful. Be careful who you listen to. When you live in adverse circumstances, stay in tune with the Spirit of God. Hear me tonight. He wants to lead you. He wants to guide you. He wants to direct you and help you. And He has the answers, and He's willing to share them with us if we'll simply listen to Him. But you got to understand this. He speaks in a still, small voice. He's not boisterous. He doesn't demand your attention. But if you want to know truth, He'll help you. Number 8, anticipate the conclusion. I like this. Look at verse 10. For thus saith the Lord. Notice the words, that after 70 years be accomplished, at Babylon I will visit you and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place. You know what he's stating? Here's what he is stating. There is going to be an end to this. That's what he's saying. This isn't going to last forever. There's going to be an end to this. I got good news for you. I got good news for you tonight, church. This ain't going to last forever. It's not. Now, if you'd told me the middle of March that in the middle of September and about we'd still be talking about it, I would have told you were crazy. Right? Because we're going to, hey, you know what we're all going to do, class? Here's what we're all going to do, class. We're going to take 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I remember. I was talking to a pastor this week. He said, did you have any idea when this started, did you have any idea that in September this would be an issue? No, had no idea. Could not have predicted. But God knew. And in the case of the Babylonian captivity, He told the people, this is how long, it's going to be 70 years. We don't have that luxury in our current circumstances. He has not told us when it's going to pass. So guess what? We have to exercise a little more faith. Because we don't know. But can I tell you something about the God that you serve? He likes it when we have to exercise faith. As a matter of fact, He said in the book of Hebrews, I believe it was, without faith, you cannot please me. And so we are living a life where we don't know. We don't know how long this is going to last. But we do know this, that it will come to pass. The Bible tells us in Psalm 50 and verse 15, and call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver thee, and thou shalt glorify me. Psalm 34:17, the righteous cry, and the Lord heareth and delivereth them out of all their troubles. When everything seems to be going wrong, do not lose sight of the fact that God is going to deliver you. Here's a familiar one. Psalm 30, verse 5. For His anger endureth but a moment, and His favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. And you say, preacher, this is really getting to me. My spirit, you got to snap out of it. You got to snap out of it. You got to say, hey, this came to pass. It came, but it's going to pass. I'm going to have them put the words up. I'm not going to ask Sharon to come to the piano, but I want us to sing just a couple of verses of what a day that will be. Don't you look forward to that? I look forward to that. I look forward to eternity. I look forward to going to heaven. I don't want to go on the next load. I'd like for all of us to go together. Right? But I said this morning after Lauren sang that everything that's got us so shackled right now is one day going to be lifted. And we're not going to care how many days the quarantine lasted. And we're not going to care that they didn't open up bowling lanes till Friday. We're not going to care. We're not going to care that the seating capacity in the restaurant is determined by a percentage. We're not going to care. You know why? Because we're going to be with Him. Amen. Help me out, would you? There is coming a day when no heartache shall come. No more clouds in the sky, no more tears to dim the eye. All is peace forevermore. on that happy golden shore. What a day, glorious day, that will pick it up a little bit on the chorus. What a day that will be, when my Jesus I shall see, when I look upon His face, the one who saved me by His grace, when He takes me by the hand. Sing it out. What a day, glorious day that will be. Second verse, this is a good one. There'll be no sorrows there, no more burdens to bear, no more sickness, no pain, no more parting over there, and forever I will be with the one who died for me. What a day, glorious day, that will. Sing the chorus and think about it, would you? What a day that will be, when my Jesus I shall see, when I look upon His face, the one who saved me by His grace, when He takes me by the hand and leads me through the promised land. What a day, glorious day. Isn't it easy to get lost in all the nonsense? So easy to get just so distracted and to come to a place to where we think things are never going to change. But I'm here to tell you that is not the case. One of these days. One of these days. And by the way, when we say that, that doesn't mean that we just have to hate life until that day comes. Brother House used to say, he said, I hate the song, "It Will Be Worth It All." He said, I hate that song. And he always kind of mockingly sang it like, it's so terrible, it will be worth it all. Right now I'm miserable, I hate my life, but one day it's going to be worth it all. Look, life is good today. We're blessed. We're blessed. But the things that we think are adverse in our lives, they're not going to last forever. Anticipate the conclusion. Quickly, number 9, cherish God's thoughts. Cherish God's thoughts. Look at verse 11. Verse 11 says, for I know the thoughts that I think toward you, God speaking now, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. So in the middle of everything that is going on around us, we can find great hope in the fact that, listen to this, we are on His mind tonight. Right now. Say, man, nobody cares. Nobody understands. Nobody really loves me. Nobody really cares what's going on in my life. You're wrong, my friend. Right. Because He said here to these people who were having a bad day. You know what He said? He said, I'm thinking about you. Psalm 139. How precious also are thy thoughts unto me, O God. How great is the sum of them. If I should count them, they are more in number than the sand. When I awake, I am still with thee. So when we're in the middle of a mess and when everything is going wrong around us and we think we've been forgotten, we've got to stop and remember that God has us on His mind. By the way, He didn't just say, I'm thinking about you, but He said, I'm thinking thoughts of peace and not of evil. You understand, don't you, that the world is full of evil. Some of this stuff we're watching unfold before our very eyes is evil. But God doesn't think evil of us. God's not thinking tonight how He can hurt you, but how He can help you. God's not thinking tonight about how He can make you miserable, but how He can give you joy unspeakable and full of glory. So we ought to cherish God's thoughts. And then the last thing, Verse 12 says this, "Then shall ye call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you." Amen. So what do? In the middle of our circumstances, talk to God about it. We talk to everybody else about it. Right? Oh, I tell you, man, what in the world are we going to do? What are we going to do? Somehow I got in a text thread with about 12 or 15 pastors. And they're good men. You would know most of them. I don't know all of them. I know most of them. And somebody put me in there, and I'm glad they did. And somebody will put on, they'll have a question. You know, what are you guys doing about this? What are you doing about this? And we had our first positive case. We don't know what to do. What did you get? Any of you guys had any positive case? What are you doing about this? What are you doing about this? That's the most stinking depressing text thread. I don't mind it because we're trying to encourage each other. But I miss, man, you get talking to pastors. And listen, I know I've said this. We can criticize government officials, but I don't want to be one. Personally. I was talking to a pastor yesterday. He called me. He said, "What do I do?" He said, "I got people in my church." He said, we've got an outbreak. He said, "I got people in my church. Now they're mad at me because we went indoors and had church." He said, "The same people were mad at me when we weren't having church." And we're all sitting there, man, we cry on each other's shoulders and we say, "Man, it's terrible, ain't it? It's crazy. You ever seen anything like this? This don't make no sense, Miss Donna. And you ever seen anything like this? It's terrible. Man, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder what's going to happen with the election. Hey, I wonder what's going to happen with the economy and what is going to happen." Can I ask you a question? Have you talked to God about it? We talk to everybody else, and none of them can do anything to fix it. But he says to these people living in Babylonian captivity, he said, "If you will call upon me and you will go and pray unto me, I will hearken unto you." Yeah. You're not facing anything tonight he can't fix. Individually, corporately, as a church, we're not facing anything tonight that he can't fix. Nationally, as a nation, we're not facing anything tonight. It's bad. The news is bad. But I'm here to tell you, there is a God in heaven who can change it all with his word. Can I ask you tonight, and I'm asking myself the same question. How much are we praying about our situation? We're griping about it. We complain about it. We blame everyone. We blame everyone. But how much do we pray? Can I ask you a question? If God turning this captivity that we're living under right now, if God turning this depended upon your prayer, do we have any hope? What if I don't mind? It's convicting, isn't it? So we're living with our circumstances. It's the hand that we've been dealt. It's where we live. It's where we are right now. For the Jews, it was in Babylon. For us, it's the United States of America. And people are deliberately trying to sow discord and divide us. You do understand that, right?
Amen.
That there is an intentional agenda to turn us against each other. Whether it is over a political candidate or whether or not we ought to wear a mask. There is a deliberate agenda to turn us against each other. This is where we live. There's a virus. By the way, it's not the first time we've ever had a virus. People are getting sick. It's not the first time people with a virus got sick. Some people die, And I hate that, and I don't say that lightly. But it's not the first time people have died from a virus. Some people have been killed by a cold. But this is where we are. Maybe we ought to talk to God about it. So in our Babylon, in our captivity, where we live today, don't ever doubt the sovereignty of God. He's in control. Don't exempt yourself from obedience, but determine to be obedient. Keep on living. Enjoy your family. Plan for the future. Minister where you are. Be careful who you listen to. Anticipate this all coming to an end. Cherish the fact that God is thinking about you, and talk to Him about it tonight. Let's bow our heads. Father, I pray that you would help us